Dear friends, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you all for joining us today. Nearly 200 people have registered for this event. A warm welcome to you all. My name is Savita Pandey, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect. Welcome to the webinar on Cultural Heritage and Mass Atrocities, Crimes Against Yazidis and the Uyghurs. Destruction of cultural heritage is often overlooked as an indicator when we talk about the risk of crimes against humanity, when we talk about atrocity crimes against a certain population. However, the deliberate destruction of cultural heritage is often intimately connected to a strategy to perpetrate mass atrocity crimes. Culture is intrinsic to a collective identity of a people. The systematic destruction of cultural heritage often aims at demolishing a targeted group's history and symbols, undermining their cultural continuity, and may pose an existential threat to their survival. For a number of years, the Global Center for the Responsibility to Protect has highlighted this important linkage between the destruction of cultural heritage and the commission of mass atrocity crimes, a phenomena we see around the world where populations are experiencing or are at risk of genocide, ethnic cleansing, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. During the genocide against the Yazidis in 2014, for example, 68 Yazidi cultural sites were systematically destroyed by ISIL as part of their campaign to eradicate the Yazidi presence in northern Iraq. In China, according to recent reports, government authorities have systematically destroyed Uyghur cultural heritage, including shrines, cemeteries, and pilgrimage sites. Approximately 16,000 mosques, 65% of the total in Xinjiang, have been destroyed or damaged as a result of government policies. The intentional destruction of Uyghur heritage is also taking place in the context of widespread and systematic persecution of the population that may amount to crimes against humanity and genocide. Today, we are honored to be joined by members of the Yazidi and the Uyghur communities who will share their findings and views on this topic. Bahram Sintash is an independent researcher, producer, and investigative journalist who has written widely about the abuses against the Uyghur community in China. Hadi Pir is the vice president of Yazda, an organization that was founded in response to the Yazidi genocide. We are also glad to be joined by Professor Jennifer Welsh, who is the former special advisor of the UN Secretary General on the responsibility to protect. And finally, we are pleased to be joined by Dr. James Kuno, President and CEO of the J. Paul Getty Trust, who has dedicated a lot of time and effort to the issue of the deliberate destruction of cultural heritage and mass atrocities. Thank you all for joining us today. The format of the event is going to be a Q&A. The event is being recorded as we broadcast live and will be posted on our website. We are also broadcasting live on our YouTube channel. Throughout the event, please interact with us on Twitter by tagging @GCR2P. So without further ado, I will turn to our distinguished panelist. My first question will go to Bahram. Bahram, you authored a report together with Uyghur Human Rights Project entitled Demolishing Faith, the Destruction and Desecration of Uyghur Mosques and Shrines. Could you please briefly tell us about whether you see the deliberate destruction of cultural heritage by the Chinese government as part of the wider campaign of targeting the Uyghur community? Bahram, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mrs. Savita, for introducing and the question. Thank you, organizer, for this important opportunity. Yes, this is a part of ongoing genocide against Uyghurs. And my report has fully proven that the cultural genocide against Uyghur culture identity has been committed with horrific scale by Chinese government. The Washington Post published a very powerful op-ed in China every day is Kristallnacht, which is introducing my report after it was published in 2019. In the op-ed, the evidence of demolishing of Uyghur mosques, shrines, and cemeteries in my report were compared to the symbolic day called Night of Broken Glass, which the Nazi Germany's anti-Jew population campaign was started in Germany in November 1938. And I think this is a very good comparison. Yes, like this is a genocide is taking place in the Uyghur region, and the level of the destruction of Uyghur heritage could be a sign of the Uyghur genocide. Since this year, the US, Canada, Netherlands have recognized China's action against Uyghurs is genocide, and countries' number is counting. And now some other countries are about to making their final judgments on this. Um, Demolition of Uyghur religious sites, Uyghur neighborhoods, and destruction of Uyghur culture and heritage are the part of the ongoing genocide campaign which China is currently committing to reduce Uyghur population, wipe out Uyghur identity, and eliminate the religion in Uyghur homeland. According to my investigation in 2019, between 10,000 to 15,000 mosques and other religious sites, amounting to about 40% were demolished in each city, county, and townships all over Uyghur homeland since late 2016. And I have been able to confirm it and compiled a list of over 100 mosques and shrines and cemeteries which have been fully demolished or discredited since 2016. Demolishing of Uyghur neighborhoods is another horrific evidence of China's ongoing genocide against Uyghurs. I found thousands of homes were demolished at the same time, and the neighborhoods were bulldozed by one in all around Uyghur homeland. For example, the total size of demolished Uyghur neighborhoods in Kucha County alone is around 3,820,000 square meter, equaling about 450 football fields. This is a home of 40,000 to 60,000 people. Google Earth satellite image history shows those neighborhoods were bulldozed between late 2018 and early 2019. According to China's state-run online news outlets, authorities recently completed the resettlement of Uyghur population of Darya Bui, which is nearly 400 years old village in Kiria County in Taklamakan. Over 1.8 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities are in West network of extra-legal internment camps and jails since early 2017. Uyghur culture, Uyghur language, Uyghur heritage are being wiped out at the same time when China is holding up almost 25 to 30% of Uyghur population in those camps and jails. No Uyghur can speak or do anything to stop this in the region. Physical and cultural genocides are committing without any obstruction. I think for the first question, I said as much as I want to say.
Thank you, Bahram, and I hope those numbers are really shocking, and I hope that this can, compel international actors to understand the depth to which your community is being persecuted. So I'll move on to Hadi now. Hadi, could you please tell us about your organization's report in collaboration with Rashid, Destroying the Soul of Yazidis, and its findings regarding the destruction of Yazidi cultural heritage in northern Iraq? What impact did these crimes have on the Yazidi community?
Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm honored to be with these distinguished panelists. and thank you for all the work you do. So yes, the report was our team in UK met with Rashid organizations and they discussed this report. We had a documentation team, we had information, but we needed more skills that Rashid team they had. So the report there were many reports about the size of destructions that happened to the Yazidi shrines. But of course, as we would talk about, this is just one aspect of destroying the heritage. It's just the physical buildings and cemeteries and shrines. So according to Kurdistan Regional Government and some of our initial reports, that there were 68 Yazidi shrines and holy places were destroyed. But in the report, we only documented 24 of them. So there were 9 of them in Sinjar area and the south side of the mountain. Most of the shrines in the north, they were saved by the people trying to protect when they fled ISIS in 2014. So they could protect them. But in Bashiqa and Bazane, they destroyed 16 of them over there. But of course, these are the ones that we are documented, and there were other places that they're either like places that some people thought they are significant to Yazidis, but some other people maybe thought they are not that significant. And there were places that were destroyed, and people rebuilt them right away after the destructions, and a lot of the uh, effort does not go to those to document those. So the reports documented 24, and of course the Yazidi holy places are not only that. So Yazidi culture is very attached to the geography, and that's one of the things that we discuss with people that it is very attached. And all those shrines, they are not only like shrines, but they are places where people bury their deads. They are cemeteries, and there are all around the year like festivals and holidays that where people go there. So destroying those places meant destroying a huge part of Yazidi heritage. But of course, that's not the only part. And I will probably stop here. But if we have time later on, we can discuss how this physical part of the Yazidi heritage, it was a part of the bigger plan that ISIS had, and implement some of it to eradicate Yazidis as a culture and as people.
No, thank you so much, Hadi. And the next question will address exactly what the report captures, that how the destruction of the cultural heritage sites was actually a commission of genocide in itself. Thank you for that. And Jennifer, now on to you. So what for you is the connection between the protection of cultural heritage and the prevention of atrocities? And as the former UN Special Advisor on R2P, do you think cultural heritage angle is often overlooked in R2P discussions?
Great. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you to the Global Center for the work it does. And also to our 2 previous speakers for sharing their stories about the threats and the destruction of cultural heritage. And I guess I know a lot more about the Yazidi case than I do about the case of the Uyghur, and I think that is in and of itself interesting to reflect on why that is the case. I do think that the destruction of cultural heritage has perhaps not received the degree of attention that we might ideally want when we think about the broad category of atrocity crimes. And that's partly because of the nature of political decision-making. That's partly as a result of how people think in the very immediate context about these crimes. But I guess I'll say two things about that connection that are important for us to remember and consider to those of us who work in this field. That firstly, that when we take genocide as a particular atrocity crime that's encompassed within the notion of responsibility to protect, that of course it encapsulates that crime of crimes that is about the destruction of a people. And a people is more than its contemporary physical members. A people has a set of cultural artifacts, but it also has a past and it has a future. And I think this is really important when we think about genocide as a crime, because in a sense, it is also about the attempt to erase that past in its largesse, in its full form, but also to rob that people of its future as a cultural group. And I think this is where the destruction of cultural heritage comes in and is overlooked. Irina Bukova, who is the former head of UNESCO, spoke of the destruction of mosques and tombs and museums during the period in which she headed UNESCO as part of larger campaigns of cultural cleansing. And I think this is a phrase that is very evocative. And so that's one sense, I think, in which we overlook that. Secondly, we often don't, within the atrocity crimes community, think enough about war crimes as a category of acts that we are concerned with under the rubric of R2P, and what war crimes commission really entails. And certainly attacks on cultural objects are identified under the additional protocols, additional protocol 2 of the Geneva Conventions as violations of IHL. But we also have international law through the 1954 Hague Convention as very, very clearly specifying obligations for states, but also non-state armed groups. And I think this is important for us to remember. But the destruction of cultural heritage, as I'll maybe come back to later in our discussion, is tied up with the conduct of war in very complex ways. Because in some instances, cultural heritage is directly attacked and very deliberately attacked. And in other cases, it is more an incidental product of the conduct of war, but no less concerning for us in the community of those who is seeking to protect cultural heritage.
No, thank you, Jennifer, for those very, very important points and putting it in the context of the 4 crimes. James, why is the issue of attacks on cultural heritage around the world a priority for you? And could you tell us about the ways in which the J. Paul Getty Trust, including through its Getty Conservation Institute, has advanced the protection of cultural heritage around the world?
Thank you, Savita. It's an honor to be in the company of Bahrain and Hadi and Jennifer, and to be able to meet with you on this important and increasingly important topic. The J. Paul Getty Trust comprises 4 programs: the Getty Museum on 2 sites, Getty Research Institute, which is a big art history library and fellowship program, Getty Foundation, the philanthropic arm of the Getty, and the Getty Conservation Institute, as you mentioned. We work together, these 4 programs, to prevent the destruction of cultural heritage, whether objects in museums or freestanding sites, by documenting its current condition. It's extremely important. You don't know what you've lost if you haven't documented what you had. By documenting its current condition, by building capacity and conserving it, and working with local authorities and peoples to show them that the world cares about their cultural heritage and about them. While we address the importance of cultural heritage through projects managed in each of our 4 programs, the Getty Conservation Institute, I'll call it the GCI, is our primary means of addressing the needs and safety of the world's cultural heritage. Let me touch briefly on a few projects. One of them, called Arches, It's a software platform, and it was born of conflict. The catastrophic destruction of Iraq's cultural heritage in the wake of the Iraq War motivated the GCI and the World Monuments Fund in 2004 to help save the country's archaeological and architectural heritage by developing an open source software program freely available for heritage organizations internationally to help them manage their cultural heritage data. The first tool in protecting and conserving cultural heritage is knowing what exists and what's missing or what's been destroyed. Second is the Mogao grottos in China across the desert from Kashgar. The Getty has worked with colleagues in China now for almost 30 years. And our first engagement was with a wall painting conservation project in the Mogao grottos, a partnership with the China State Authority of Administration of Cultural Heritage, undertaken in collaboration with the Dunhuang Academy. It aimed to identify and understand through investigation and research the causes and mechanisms of deterioration of the wall paintings at this World Heritage Site on the Silk Road in Western China. The site, active from the 4th until the 14th century, contains more than 500 decorated temples. It is considered to be the world's largest single repository of Buddhist pictorial art. And commercial and economic development throughout the Gansu province necessarily threatens the integrity of cultural heritage throughout the region, and it's being monitored. Third is Bagan in Myanmar. For the past 2 years, we've been partnering with the Department of Archaeology and National Museum in Myanmar on a multi-year project to develop a holistic and sustainable approach to complex conservation and management issues across the site, which contains some 3,500 temples, stupas, monasteries, and archaeological remains, which house an astonishing collection of wall painting, sculpture, stucco, glazed decoration, votive tablets, and inscriptions. Our project at Bagan will address 5 targeted conservation challenges on the site: site management, repair and seismic retrofitting of monuments, conserving data, decorated elements of the site, recording, documenting and providing for information management, and the training of local professionals. The long-term goal is the improved conservation and management of the site, as well as other sites within Myanmar and in Southeast Asia. Because we have to work with national authorities, our work on the site has been suspended due to the coup. One last project. For the past 3 years, the Getty has been working on a book-length project titled Cultural Heritage and Mass Atrocities, co-edited by Tom Weiss and myself, with 34 essays by historians, international legal and military scholars, UNESCO officials, and humanitarians, including Simon Adams, Jennifer Welsh, and until his recent death, Edward Luck. The book explores links between attacks on cultural heritage and mass atrocities from Western China through Central Asia, the Middle East, West Africa, and Central America. Needless to say, R2P plays an important role in the book, which opens with the question, what if Raphael Lemkin's original draft of the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide had been left to include cultural as well as physical genocide? The book will be published next year, and we hope we come to at least comes close to answering some of these questions in the book.
Thank you for that, and thank you for all the efforts in preserving the cultural heritage around the world. And we're all looking forward to the volume. I think it'll be a great addition to the literature on R2P and the connection between cultural heritage and mass atrocity crimes. So thank you very much for that. So now moving back again to Bahram. So Bahram, in your assessment, what kind of cultural, social, psychological impact has the destruction of the Uyghur cultural heritage sites have had on your communities? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Thanks for the question. So many historic mosques and other religious sites have been demolished. I added stories of 12 iconic demolished mosques in my report. They are including the oldest and the largest mosques in Uyghur homeland. For example, a 800 years old Korea Jama and 500 years old, the Grand Mosque of Kargaluk were fully demolished in 2018. And they were the symbols of Islamic history in Uyghur homeland. Without the mosque, Uyghur Muslims become religiously homeless in their homeland. Because Muslims call mosques are the God's home, and where Muslims feel God's mercy and being themselves close to God. Without mosque, Muslims cannot deliver their religion to their next generation. As Hadid mentioned about the Yazidi shrines, the same situation is in the Uyghur region as well. So we have so many historic shrines, which is over 1,000 years. Those locations in some of the most of the shrines are located in around the Taklamakan Desert. Those locations has already distracted and then also banned people to visiting the location. So Uyghurs' lifestyles and their religious practice very connect to those locations. And Uyghurs are prohibited from any kind of religious practices at the public or in their home. Keeping Islamic costumes and saying Islamic gatherings causes Uyghurs to rounded up in camps. Chinese government has detained almost all religious leaders, scholars, and those who practice Islam often. In my opinion, one of the most destructive action by China to eradicate Uyghur culture is demolishing of Uyghur neighborhoods and relocating of Uyghur population into newly built, highly surveillance and police-controlled neighborhoods. Those places have no difference than the detention camps. The lifestyle and customs of Uyghurs are being completely changed. Uyghurs are living in those houses that are different than from their original settlement habit and lifestyle. Uyghurs in those neighborhoods are forced to adopt Chinese culture. So many evidence shows that Uyghurs in those new neighborhoods forcibly worked in the factories that were built in these new locations. Those new neighborhoods and factories were built side by side almost every city and county in Uyghur region at the same time in 2018. The mass detention and new settlement of Uyghur population results decreasing of Uyghur population. The birth rate has held in last 2 years. According to Chinese statistical yearbook compiled by National Bureau of Statistics of China, the birth rate of Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region has held declined sharply since 2017. China's systematic genocide is continuing, and Chinese government is reaching its goal to erase Uyghur identity in Uyghur homeland day by day.
Thank you for that, Bahram. And that's really, I mean, all of that sounds really horrifying. And you very eloquently pointed out that just sort of the destruction of any kind of connection to the neighborhoods and living together in the way that you have lived for centuries, the destruction of that is having long-term impact on the existence of the Uyghur population in China. So thank you for that. Hadi, I want to pick up on what you mentioned towards the end of your response, that you know, you in your report you talk about that the ISIL destruction of the Yazidi sacred site was one of the elements of the genocide. So you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Oh yes. So I mean, since the day one when we were in Washington D.C. and trying to work with the U.S. government to, because there were about 75,000 people were trapped in the mountain, and they would face the same fate that the other people faced who ISIS captured them. So men will be slaughtered, and children and children will be enslaved. So and also, as the report mentioned, and Dabaq was the ISIS magazine, and if I'm recollecting correctly, in the 5th edition, So the ISIS said we handed the Yazidi case to some of our scholars, religious scholars, to decide what to do with these people, because we want, and they said we wanted to know whether they are people of the book, like Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians, or whether they are infidels, or whether they, at some time they were Muslims and they converted to Islam, but they rejected Islam later on. So to decide what to do with them. And according to them, they found out that these people, they would never be Muslims. So that what need to happen is they need to be eradicated. So the men need to be killed, and women and children need to be enslaved. And that's so the plan was, the intention, and again the Rome Statute, the Article 6, focuses on the intention when it comes to genocide. So the intention was to eradicate them, and that's exactly what they did with the people they captured. So, and those who were trapped in a mountain, they would say, face the same destiny, but fortunately they managed to escape. So they, with the boys, they would check their armpit, and there is hair. They would say, "Oh, these are men. Kill them." If they don't, they need to go to training camp and be indoctrinated. And then women are just slaves, and then the kids will be raised based on their interpretation of Sharia, of course. So that's what that was the plan. So that's why I said this was part of it. And now again, the Yazidis are leaving their areas in Sinjar, Bashman, Bazani. It's it's one of the other things. Like I mentioned, Yazidis are very attached to geography. Most of their holy places are there. All their traditions and ceremonies and holidays. So everything is around the place they live in, and what they know. So that's why I mentioned that was just one of them. And to be quite honest, they were about to succeed. And I Dr. Welsh knows more about the law part of it. But when we used to go to the UN and the US government and European governments, and we were discussing with them, and some of them said, "Why you focus too much on the genocide?" And we told them it's because this is not the first time our people going through this. We have recorded 72 attempts. And actually, just when Yazidis hear the genocide, they feel that somebody need to at least this time recognize it. And so hopefully that will not happen in the future, because if we only focus on some crimes and some of the issues, it would be like maybe a minor issue, or just something that everybody went through. It was not targeted to eliminate these people. So again, I do not want to take too much time, because I know other panelists have valuable contributions to this, but there are too many details into this. Why it's just it's important to look at the picture as whole.
No, Hadi, that's really powerful what you said. And both Bahram and Hadi, like, we are so glad to have you on this panel, because I mean, both these reports, and I'll encourage people who are watching this panel to check out both these reports, because it's really important to sort of understand the toll, the long-term toll this is having on both these people, the Uyghurs as well as the Yazidis, that it's not just the killing of the people, the attack on cultural heritage, the moving people to different neighborhoods, these surveillance-oriented structures is actually destroying the heart of the communities, and will have long-term repercussions on the identity of your people. Jennifer, coming back to you, generally people associate the commission of atrocity crimes with physical violence against populations. What do you think is unique about targeting of cultural heritage in the context of commission of atrocity crimes?
Yes, Savita, thanks for that question, because it's clear within the responsibility to protect principle that a motivating factor over years has been, the phenomenon of mass killing. And that is not to, anything I'm about to say is not to take away from the importance of that focus, which is a key part of the agenda. But the agenda has always been broader than that. It has been an agenda, firstly, that focuses on aspects of criminal behavior which do not involve mass killing. Ethnic cleansing and particular forms of crimes against humanity do not necessarily entail the physical destruction of people or communities. It's a broader set of acts. And we need to remember that when we formulated the responsibility to protect, we formulated it in that breadth. And so it's crucial for us to remember that. Of course, we're focused on instances of mass killing, but the agenda has a broader focus. And secondly, it's always had a very significant preventive dimension. And so we look for risk factors and the intensification of risk factors when we're seeking to fulfill our responsibilities to protect. And placing cultural heritage or cultural artifacts or cultural practices in danger, making them vulnerable, should be a warning sign for all of us. And we need to view them in the context of other threats to populations. So if we're serious about prevention, cultural heritage and threats or destruction of it or to it should be very much a focus. And then lastly, I think we should be concerned within the responsibility to protect framework about the impacts on populations. And you know, in order to speak to a wider audience this morning, I'd like to take you back to almost 2 years ago now, when a very iconic church in Paris was burning, Notre Dame, and how people felt around the world watching that church burn, and the sight of literature, music, art, the beating heart of culture for so many. And you begin to have an inkling, but only an inkling, about the psychological impacts that Hadi and Bahram are sharing with us this morning. I'm not making the two things equivalent. I'm only trying to evoke for you the sense of psychological impact. And so we need to think in the round about what the impact on populations are of atrocity crimes in all of their manifestations. They are physical, they are psychological. And so I think that cultural heritage plays a very important part in thinking about ethnic cleansing and crimes against humanity, in thinking about what it means to prevent and what signs we should be looking for, and finally, how we recover and heal from the impacts of atrocity crimes.
No, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you for sharing that example. I mean, I think that sort of very evocatively captures what it means, and multiply that by many thousands is what Hadi and Bahram's people have felt over the years. So that was a great example to bring things into perspective. James, what role do you think can museums play? I mean, you talked about this earlier, about the different programs that you have in preserving cultural heritage, but what roles can, what more can museums do in preventing the destruction of cultural heritage? And how can member states, countries, civil society organizations, and UN support these efforts?
Well, thank you. I think with Jennifer's account of the destruction of cultural heritage, which was in so much in our minds when we've watched helplessly as Notre Dame burned, is an image that we should take away from this morning, not to downplay at all the sufferings of the Uyghur people or the Yazidi people, but as an example of what cultural heritage means to people and how it can be embraced by people from all over the world. That it needn't be only the people who most intimately identify with it. The one thing that I think that we think of as cultural heritage is what's so important about it is that it's it's a non-renewable resource. When it's gone forever. And when it's there and it's present, it brings solace and comfort and identity to people. But it also allows those of us who are not of that group of people, an ability to understand a bit more about those people because of the power that the cultural heritage has to attract our attention and to hold our attention. It's the proximity of the close relationship between ethnic cleansing and cultural cleansing is extremely important here, and we've had it told with such power and intimacy by Barama, by Hadi, and also more elaborately by Jennifer. It's something that we think in museums. Museums exist to protect cultural heritage, to house it in environmental conditions, to perpetuate its existence for a long time, if not forever, and also it allows us to identify ourselves with them. So it's museums are just a home, temporary home, a structure for the protection of cultural heritage.
No, thank you very much for that. And do any of the panelists have comments on each other's responses? I mean, we have time, so if you do have, then that'll be great. If you want to comment. But my final question to all of you, and this is a question to each one of you, is that what can local, national, international actors do in response to the destruction of cultural heritage? And how can we talk about justice and reparations in this context? So Bahram, we can start with you. We'll do the same order.
Yes, good question. China is economically and militarily a superpower. Stopping China from committing this ongoing genocide against Uyghurs needs a great alliance. To use UN Genocide Convention to stop this ongoing genocide. Not only Western countries' recognitions and condemnations on this won't be enough. Many Asian, African, and Latin American countries are not only silent on Uyghur genocide, but they actually voted to define China's policies in Xinjiang at UN. This shows us that activists, organizations, journalists, researchers, countries, and everyone need to do more works and take more effective actions. We need to educate more people about the Uyghur genocide, Yazidi genocide, Yazidi the things happening to the Yazidi people. We also, especially to the people in the Islamic world in Asia, because most of the European and American countries, they actually deeply concerned about those issues, those things, tragedies happening in our homelands. But most of the people around what I mentioned earlier, they don't have full information about tragedies happening in our homelands. So I believe that today's event is going to bring more impact on this. Please save this wonderful culture and my people before it's too late. I want to add my personal experience on this meeting. My father is one of the Uyghur who is in suffering in Chinese concentration camp. He's a well-known Uyghur journalist, and he has been justifiably detained in more than 3 years. We Uyghurs in diaspora did our best to save our loved ones, our people, and our culture. Our number is small and our power is weak, but our voice have been loud enough. We also get tremendous support from people in North America, Europe, and Jew communities around the world. I think everyone who is listening this here will take action for us. I believe this. I also support Yazidi brothers and sisters My feeling has been very sad for Yazidi people since I learned about the tragedies happened to Yazidi people and destruction of beautiful Yazidi culture and heritage. Uyghurs and Yazidis will overcome this hardship and bring back everything they have lost one day. I think we need your help. I need more work has to done for us. Thank you.
Bahram, thank you for that very emotional call to action, and I hope that this is a very small contribution in the ways in which we can communicate your message to the wider policy world and the international community. Hadi, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Bahram, and yes, I think we all need to come together to face some of these issues. If we made it individual cases, if we made it, that's my case, that's yours. This is not my thing. This is yours. That's. I think it's a time for all of us come together, and thank you for, for your nice words. Yeah, yes, so I think what with the Yazidi case, we are more fortunate that the Iraqi government is, and Kurdistan regional government, they are more willing to help, especially lately. So they just passed the Survivor Act through the Iraqi government and parliament. That's a good step, but there a lot need to be done. So hopefully that with more work and more pressure on the Iraqi government, there will be similar legislations like that. There are many articles in the Iraqi constitution. They are against minorities, unfortunately, and those need to be changed. And also there is conflict in Sinjar, and Iraqi government can step in and provide security and provide government. That's something we have been calling the Iraqi government and the international community to do. So hopefully the international community with the Iraqi government, they will work on this issue. And also rebuilding, of course, even before the ISIS, the Yazidi areas were ignored by all the prior Iraqi authorities, and the areas in general, they need rebuilding, but it's more specifically these heritage sites. And also they just put so we need more of these heritage sites to be under international protection. We need more funds from international community toward these areas, rebuild them, and also maybe expand them and social. But one thing that Dr. Kuna talked about, the museums, we also been trying to work with the Iraqi government. Of course, Iraq is facing a huge economic crisis, and that's also include the Kurdistan regional government. But we were hoping that the Iraqi government will initiate, or some other countries, and they will find like a museum for these minorities, but also what they went through and some of the distractions. So it will be a reminder for the Iraqi generations and the entire world of these atrocities, and just will be an educational also tool, and people can use it. So they educate people that it's that what people went through, and that's it's not. So hopefully that will remove some of the also the hate and misunderstanding in the community. And the last thing I want to say, I also want to add to what Bahram said. I agree with him that the Europeans and America and some other countries, they have been more active in your support. We have visited many Muslim countries, including Egypt, including UAE, including Kuwait, and many other countries. And we are hoping that more of these countries will open their doors for Yazidis and non-Yazidis to go and educate their people about these atrocities. And we want to see more support of them, so Yazidis and other minorities will feel that that regardless of what ISIS claimed, regardless of what ISIS said, whether they represent Islam or they interpret, that no, we have the majority of people that disagree with them and they're supporting them, and actually they are fighting. So the Iraqi soldiers, the Iraqi army, I mean, they show that they fought ISIS. That there was thousands and thousands of soldiers who died to liberate the Yazidi areas and other places. But we want more from other people, and we actually want more from the Iraqi government as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Hadi. And also, I mean, I think the Yazidi example is really interesting in terms of your success. I mean, it's limited. There's a long way to go, but your success in addressing justice issues around the Yazidi genocide within Iraq. So that's definitely an inspiration for other survivor communities. And that was really interesting what you said. And Jennifer.
Thanks, Savita. And it's great to follow on from these very practical and actionable areas that both Hadi and Bahram have outlined for your listeners. I think what's interesting about having the two of them together is, of course, they represent cases where the perpetrators of attacks on cultural heritage are very different. So in the Chinese case, we have, as Bahram has talked about, a very powerful state in today's international system. And in Hadi's case, we have a non-state armed group. And let me come back to some reflections on China in a moment. But with respect to non-state armed groups, I think what's extremely important if we're thinking about how to act on this area going forward is that we really understand the motivations behind what is driving some of the destruction of cultural heritage behind non-state armed groups. Some non-state armed groups, not those being discussed today, have actually been really instrumental in acts of protection of cultural heritage. If you think about the Free Libyan Army, the Free Syrian Army, even the Kurdish Peshmerga. And there, the lesson for me is that we have to become much better as an international community at finding ways to engage constructively with those non-state armed groups who are actually part of the solution rather than part of the problem. And we've been reluctant and less effective than we could be in doing that. For those who are systematically and strategically attacking cultural heritage and ethnic groups, we have to understand what is behind those acts of very public destruction. They're performative. They're designed to have a certain effect on an international audience. And we need to understand that much better than we do, and to find ways of denying them the effect that they are seeking. And that's more in the preventive realm. With respect to China, I have two sets of reflections. I think, firstly, it's very important for those of us in the atrocity prevention and R2P community to remember that, of course, there are certain actors and certain bodies that are going to be paralyzed by politics, who are going to be less effective in confronting this than we would like. And we've never been naive about that. We understand the politics, but our role is different. And I want to actually bring back someone that James mentioned earlier this morning, and that is former special advisor, the late Ed Luck, who taught me something very important when I was special advisor. And he said, the Security Council and states will be inconsistent in how do they respond to these situations because of power politics. But we need to be absolutely consistent. We need to call out these acts where they are occurring, and yes, pragmatically search for solutions, but we need to remember our role, which is to not be paralyzed by the politics, because through our voices come, potential ways of acting. But the other thing I'd say, and this is something, Savita, I've been reflecting on, is that we need to find ways of holding those who advocate more political solutions, the slowly, we can't antagonize the great powers, we need to find ways of holding them accountable for their political engagement strategies. What have you actually achieved through that strategy? And when do we review it? And when do we ask you to change course? And when do we bring our voice back in? I think that's very important for those of you in the advocacy community to remember this morning. And I just want to thank you again for bringing Hadi and Baham's voices here to remind us of what our job is in the broader R2P community. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, for that very powerful reminder, because I think that's such an important point, because within the advocacy community, we are constantly told that, you know, it's the behind the scenes diplomacy, but even behind the scenes diplomacy, I mean, at some point you have to show evidence of progress. If there is none, then that diplomacy is not working. So thank you for that very important reminder, and also thank you for reminding us of the contribution of Professor Ed Luck in thinking about these kinds of things and thinking about individual responsibility to protect and how our voices matter. Thank you so much for that. James, the final word.
Well, thank you. It's just simply to say what an honor it has been to be in the company of Bahram and Hadi, also Jennifer, of course, but Bahram and Hadi for not only representing the Uyghur people and the Yazidi people, but representing people and other cultures around the world who are in similar situations. They represent the tragic examples of destruction of cultural heritage and its relationship to mass atrocities. And I think we all carry around with us certain phrases to remind us of these truths. And one of them, of course, is the famous one from Heinrich Heine. First they burn the books, then they burn the people. The intimate relationship between the culture and the cultural artifact and the culture and of the people of the culture has got to be something that we can't ever forget.
Thank you so much. And very fortunately, we are absolutely on time in terms of ending this webinar. I want to thank each one of you for participating today. I think that we had a very rich discussion of different kinds of stakeholder in this entire enterprise. The communities that are directly affected by it. Jennifer, your contribution in terms of how policymakers and how all of us should think about this, and James in sort of, you know, being sort of the people who preserve our cultural heritage, and having that voice was also really important. So thank you again. And I just want to end on a note that destruction of cultural heritage is not only just you know, it's not a big word like even culture. It's related to and connected to our individual memories of how we spend time with our families and how we pray, how we celebrate holidays. So all of that is very personal, and thus thank you again for some personal testimonies and some personal thoughts in this sometimes very policy-oriented discussions. So thank you again, and you can watch the recording of this event on our website and on our YouTube channel. You can also access it through our Twitter account at GCR2P. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.